Welcome to another episode of the Teaching Canada's History podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Campbell, and today we are speaking with the finalists of the 2024 Governor-General's History Award for Excellence in Teaching. Created in 1996, the award recognizes innovative and impactful approaches to teaching Canadian history. For more information, visit canadashistory.ca/teaching award. Today I'm speaking with Jason Vander Meulen, a high school history teacher in Waterloo, Ontario. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, Brooke, thanks for having me.
Will you provide us, an overview of the project that you have designed for your students to do?
Yeah, sure. So my project is pitching an early 20th century invention. For the students, the investor pitch is a different medium of communication, and the project requires a historical inquiry that gets pretty immersive. So they get really into the social history of their subject. Um, it's a shift from the essay, of course, and I recognize how inauthentic the essay actually is. Generally, there's very little use of the essay beyond academia. I still see tremendous value in it, and I'm going to keep teaching it because of the inherent logical structure of the essay. But I chose this startup investor pitch as a creative medium to communicate historical findings. It makes really good connections to the recent regional history of Waterloo. We're home of the BlackBerry. We have many startup incubators. The tech sector has long been an important engine in our community. Our school, Waterloo Collegiate, is nestled between two universities, so innovation and the startup culture, it's all part of our regional ecosystem here. Most high school students, of course, they're quite removed from this world, so we need to explore this regional history of innovation, and we need to learn the components of the startup pitch. So we introduce the concept of disruptive technologies and new innovations and explore some modern examples. Students usually cite things like cell phones or vaccinations or renewable energy. And students then move on. They conduct research of an invention or an innovation from the first half of the last century. And the inquiry coincides with a focus on the ways of life on social history. This positions the students really well for an immersive approach to the assignment. And in their teams, they develop a historical persona, they develop their pitch decks, and they incorporate their findings of their research while they're doing all of this. So eventually, it all comes together as a presentation that they can deliver in a variety of ways, often kind of suitable to their own comfort levels and what they would like to do. Ideally in a classroom setting, sometimes as a video and sometimes just with me as an audience.
There's bridging of a lot of different themes and ideas going on in this project. Can you speak more to how your students are able to utilize the historical thinking concepts and deepen their historical thinking throughout this work?
Yeah, sure. The focus on disruptive technology is a focus on historical significance. It's a real shift for students to think about disruption as something that upends older ways of life so that to result in a more innovative way of doing things. Students have been told for much of their young lives not to be disruptive, right? So we tend to measure significance in a number of ways as historians, but here it's the historical impact. In other words, the disruption that's central. When students articulate the problem and the solution components of their pitch, they're sharing the results of this historical inquiry. These are 1920s solutions, for example, to 1920s problems. And it's neat to see the students sort of wrap their heads around that. A guiding question for the project is how were the ways of life for Canadians changed by their chosen inventions? Students are pitching innovations like insulin or monopoly or traffic lights or even instant cake mix, right? So in some cases, the impact is revolutionary. In others, you can describe the impact as being more localized, something specific to a 1940s homemaker, for example, or maybe a field soldier in the Second World War. Historical perspective is part of this focus on impact. It especially comes out in the exploration of social history and the focus on Canadians' ways of life. Students begin to learn how disruptive technology has always been part of the historical discussion. We can think about the agricultural revolution, we can think about bronze or iron, we can think about the ways that Early European newcomers were reliant on indigenous technology in order to survive in these lands. So, as historians, we gravitate to these defining moments. And when something old gives way to something new and life changing, the students in the pitch, they try to share these historical perspectives when they present their pitches in role as their historical persona.
When thinking about this project, but also your classroom in general and going beyond this work, what resources do you use to support teaching and learning history, and how do you use them?
Yeah, there are a lot of in class options that I provide to the students. I really like the old Canadiana scrapbooks. They're still a wonderful source of early 20th century advertisements, and they give wonderful accounts of new innovation. I have an in class library of old Canadian history textbooks, and I like to start there because once you open it up to online research, the spines of those books will not get cracked at all. There's a few online sources that I do curate for the students for the purpose of the assignment. I find that what students get into the most, they get really excited about the 20th century slang. And it's because they are presenting in role. They can't wait to incorporate this into their scripts, get a lot of bees knees and cat's pajamas coming out in those presentations. But the most valuable resources I think I've developed are those in conjunction with community partnerships. So I'm no expert in the worlds of venture capitalism or angel investing or startup culture. Luckily, there are lots in this community who are. And for the components of the pitch, I've consulted with Dural Communications. It's a local company that specializes in pitch coaching. And after a few conversations with them, I'm able to instruct my students about the most important parts of a pitch deck. And my hope is, for future classes is to bring in these community experts as guests to conduct a pitch deck 101 session for my students.
That sounds like it would be lots of fun. And speaking of, working with experts and consultation and kind of thinking, I feel like the bigger picture here, what impact do you see that this project has had on your students' learning, and perhaps what are some of the outcomes that you've seen in the community?
Yeah, this is the kind of activity that students often enjoy. There's a lot of creativity and a lot of play involved. Many students like to see themselves in a modern Dragon's Den scenario, and they can really have fun with it. The historical immersion required by the assignment really adds a layer to the educational experience. For most, it's a pretty memorable part of the course. Again, I think because of the play, the interaction, and they have to feed off each other as well, and they can really run with some pretty unique and original things that they're doing. What's happening as we undertake the process of this assignment, students are learning the structure of a modern, formal medium of communication. There's a rationale behind each component of the pitch: the value proposition, the problem, the solution. So just like each part of the essay, there's a rationale behind all of those. It's a logical structure. But I think the pitch has more authenticity than the essay. For the students, it can have potential connections to a professional world. And I really like how it makes connections to the recent regional history of Waterloo as well. This connection to the community, it grabs the students in some pretty interesting ways, but I like how they become more aware of their community and they see it in a new light.
Yeah, that would be really special, I think. A new lens on the community. Thank you so much for speaking with me today, Jason, and for sharing more about the project that you have been leading in your classroom.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Brooke. Thank you again for having me on here.